What's up, E39 Source? It's my pleasure to introduce you to my 2003 E39 M5. Alright guys, so in typical E39 Source fashion, I'm going to give you a full in-depth tour of my car. As I mentioned, it's a 2003 E39 M5 in carbon black. Build date is March of 03. So I bought this E39 M5 in September of 2018. I've actually owned it about 5 months. And sorry, this video is kind of delayed. As a lot of you guys know, I actually have my own YouTube channel where I've done a bunch of mods and maintenance to this car already, which I'll go through in just a second here. But it's taken me way too long, inexcusable, to get a formal video up on the E39 Source channel. So while we're standing over here, I thought I would mention that generally speaking, the body is in great shape. I'm the third owner, and I think the first owner pretty much just drove it on the highway because it's very few door dings. I think there's, one over here and then one on the other side and then there's one in the rear. So generally speaking, the body is very straight. There's no rust on the body, although on both of the window trim in the rear, hopefully the camera will focus, there is a little bit of bubbling that I noticed. Those are the only two rust areas that I've noticed. There's no gas cap rust, which I'm only a 5-month owner of an M5, but as you can see, actually it is a little wet because I just washed it about 10 minutes ago. So it's straight, there's no rust in here, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on this because I know that, this thing definitely has water that'll accumulate in there. It's just a poor design. All right, so hopefully you guys can tell that the paint is actually in really good shape. When I bought it, the paint was absolutely atrocious. I had a few friends and myself do a 2-step paint correction on this thing. So we really made the paint pop and did all the trim. The exhaust was detailed a few months ago. Obviously I got a new rear badge because that whole thing was faded, and it's super gloss. I have the lights here just so there's a little more ambient lighting in the garage. With a black car, it's reflecting. You can see the M3 super well in here. And yeah, that actually is my M3, so I'm living the dream over here, guys. I will say that for me, this car is a daily driver. So the M3 is extremely low miles, about 42,000. And this car, why don't we go in here, has 125,000 miles. I bought it with about 122,000. For 16 grand, and this has 125.6, and of course you can see the beautiful missing pixel situation, which is typical on these cars. I will be sending this gauge out to be fixed and replaced, so it'll have all of the little pixels working properly. So what's really nice about this car is that everything works. Everything works. There's no issue with the mirror. This has a little issue, which I actually have a new screen that I will be putting in. It does have the wood trim. I call it the old man wood, and I really hate it. So I will be changing that at some point in the future. I did do a GROM Bluetooth module for at least for the time being, which I'll show you in a second. But I just want to kind of give you a sort of a once over of this car. Everything is here, everything's in great shape. Let me get out. I got new floor mats recently, and I did just a quick little interior detail today as well, so I figured it was a good opportunity to try to show off the car to you guys. As you can see, we've got the F10 M5 shift knob, which is illuminated. I think you can see it is illuminated when I turn on the parking lights. And it also has a short shift kit from the E60. So this thing has a short shift kit from the E60, which actually looks way more notchy than it is when you're driving it, just because I'm kind of pulling on it at a weird angle. But I think it's perfect. I will be totally honest with you. I was a little nervous about doing this. I figured it would make the car too race car and make it really weird to drive. But I did that. I did the short shift kit, and I also did that shift knob, and I really think it's worth the time to put that in. I also paired that with a new clutch, flywheel, and rear main seal, which was done 700 miles ago. So This thing was slipping, especially when I was driving it a little bit harder. You know, I was trying to be racer boy over here, and the clutch would start slipping. So that was no good. I got a new clutch flywheel, and that ran me about $1,650, including parts and labor. So in my opinion, not too bad. I figured I'd share that with you guys. Before we open up the hood, I'll give you a full walk around. The wheels are in pretty good shape. There's no, you know, serious pitting. Although, actually this is probably the best one. I picked a good one to show you guys. There is some curb rash, you know, and a little bit of, you know, curb rash kind of around some of the edges of these wheels. I would like to get them refinished, but you know, it's kind of, it's not as essential as sort of the inner workings of the car. You know, I did an oil change when I first bought the car, and I did a few other things as well. I'm pretty OCD, you know, I'm very anal about the paint, and owning a black car, or at least a super dark blue car, is pretty scary to me. So far, it's okay. And I am going to go around to the front, and I know that a lot of guys on the channel are going to absolutely tear me apart for the grills, and I'm sorry. But I wanted to change it up, and I wanted something different. Obviously, these are the gloss black grills that are the F10 M5 style, and I'm sorry to tell you, but I do kind of like them right now. So for now, we got rid of the chrome, and we did some rock chip repair as well. I have a lot of those videos on my channel if you guys are interested. Not to be doing a shout out for myself here, but if you are interested in more detail on, you know, the rock chip repair and the front and the paint correction and the trim and stuff like that, I have more details on that. And it does unfortunately have license plate holes, but they look like they might have been pre-drilled originally. So when you're just walking up to it, you're just walking around in the parking lot or in the garage or whatever, they don't really stick out. They're not as noticeable as they could be. So, you know, I'm kind of grateful for that. So the front is a little bit torn up because of rock chips, but I did fill a lot of them with the Dr. Color chip system, which worked really well. You know, this fog light has a broken sort of housing here. I'll have to get a new piece there. And I don't know if that's a new rock chip or what. So that's no good that's happening there. Actually, I will say, oh, I did, obviously, I mentioned earlier, I did do LEDs. They're 6000K in color for the halos, and I also have LEDs in the fog lights, which I like, but I don't like. It's nice that everything matches with the xenon lights and the halos and the fog lights. They're all the same color pretty much. So for now, I'm gonna leave it, but I was gonna point out kind of a nasty crack in this bumper. So yes, I would like to get a new bumper, but for now it's gonna stay, unfortunately, to tell you. So you know, this is no good, but for now it's gonna stay. This side of the car, you know, you can see here's a nasty door ding. That's no good. The trim was restored, you know, new windshield wipers when I bought the car, new fluids. We're gonna go in this side of the car, the passenger side. The door sill's not bad. The driver's side has kind of a nasty scratch. The seats are in excellent shape. I will be doing a full, you know, leather exfoliation, softener, and cleaner. Most likely I'll be using the Leather Reek system, which is like a 24 to 48 hour system. Much more involved. Sorry, there's some crud in there. I worked on the seat twist issue on the driver's seat. That sucked, I'm not gonna lie. Passenger seat, don't know if you can tell, but same issue. So that will have to be addressed as well. Other than that, the interior is in very good shape. Alcantara is literally immaculate. There's no sagging. You know, my strategy for keeping this in good shape is not touching it. I don't wanna wipe it, I don't wanna touch it, I don't wanna do anything with it. So it's in good shape. Leave it alone, and you know, no problem. Obviously this is not extended leather, but I did notice, you know, there is leather here. I don't know if that's how they all are, but I do kind of dig this. It makes it feel a little bit higher end. So yeah, so that's good. Let's go to the back. There you go. It's not dent my car here. Sorry, there's a hoodie back here. Extremely good shape. You know, there's pretty much no one sits back here. The leather, you know, it's a little hard. The leather's hard, so it needs to be softened up. Obviously, I have the split fold seats, and I do have a power rear sunshade, which is sweet. It's one of my favorite features of this car. I just feel like a badass when I use it. Yeah, so really nothing to say about the back seats. The door sills are just fine. It's a little bit wet from the wash earlier, but everything's in good shape. Everything looks just the way it should look. All right, so here is the little bubbling that's occurring there, so that'll have to be addressed shortly. Gas cap's good. I think that's it. Let's go in the trunk real quick. We got some bubbles going on from the wash. I do have the CD changer, which I actually took out, and here is the Grom. I left the CD changer out because weight savings, bro. You know, obviously we need to make sure that we're saving weight. I'm just kidding about that. I just didn't have a reason to put it back in. Everything in here looks up to snuff, and I don't know why that was all mangled in there, but so trunk is good. I do have the M Audio, which you know, I've gotten in debates with M5 guys that I don't really think it's that good. I would definitely go aftermarket, although I know a lot of you guys really like the OEM stuff, so it definitely was a letdown, I'm not gonna lie. I've played around with it as much as I could. CDs, Bluetooth, radio, all that stuff. I've tried every input I could think of, and it just doesn't sound that clear, and not nearly as loud as I thought it would get. And that is the cord that I ran. I'd like to tuck it away a little bit more, but haven't got around to it to get to the Grom. So that's pretty much it. Toolkit has almost everything, but not everything. Of course, it doesn't have the triangle because it's a US car, but I think that's it. Let's get on to the engine. Okay, so here is the engine bay of the M5. I did do an engine bay detail maybe 1,000 miles ago or so, and it's in pretty good shape, to be honest with you. This was, I believe it was an Ohio car most of its life. I don't remember. I feel like it was in Jersey as well, but I don't really know. Overall, like even the coolant expansion tank, I know a lot of times these get super yellow. This actually doesn't really look that bad to me. Plastics are in pretty good shape. I did a detail of it, so I made them nice and dark. This is something that I want to be replacing. I don't understand how this gets so disgusting, but I want to replace that. You know, obviously it's under the engine bay, so it's not as much of a priority as other things. I did cabin air filters. I did oil changes. I will be doing, you know, coolant and brake fluid. I haven't checked these filters yet, which is probably a no-no. That's pretty much it. I mean, the car runs really well. I'll start it up for you in just a second here. But there really isn't anything else to say, you know, about under the hood here. You know, this is really the ugliest part, which I don't know if you guys can maybe comment. I'll check the comments and see if, you know, sand this down and, you know, get it back in order, or just buy a new piece if it's that easy, but I assume it's not. So that's kind of the ugliest part, you know, under the hood here. And then, you know, up here, it's a little bit rusty as well, but that's really, you know, inside, if we get kind of close and personal here, there isn't a lot going on. There's nothing scary. There's, you know, I did a detail, so it definitely looks a lot nicer than it could. All right, so this isn't gonna be a completely cold start, but it's like pretty much. So this car's pretty quiet, so you'll see. Okay guys, so as you can hear, the car sounds really quiet, pretty much no Vanos noise in my opinion. I mean, it does definitely have the S62 style sound that of course all of us have grown to love or maybe hate. But regarding the exhaust in the back, it is stock. This car is pretty much all stock. You know, I shined up the exhaust tips just to make them pop a little bit more, you know, they really needed it. But I will be hopefully doing a muffler delete in the future, maybe in the next few months or so, because you know, this car sounds so good and I just hate to have it restricted so much. So I'm actually working with a guy who's doing, you know, custom tips and stuff. He's part of the channel as well. So we're going to be kind of working together and seeing if we can get some, you know, a little bit bigger tips and getting them, you know, nice and clean looking. It's definitely going to look OEM. So that's really the only other plan other than a BPM tune for this car. So I know Mike Benvo from BPM Sport. He's working with me and doing a tune for this car. That is actually why this thing is right here, because I'm in the process of tuning it. So although right now this car doesn't have a tune, it will hopefully in the next, today if I have time, or maybe the next week or so. So that's really all that I really plan to do modification wise. I do plan to keep it mostly, you know, OEM or maybe a little OEM plus. That's kind of my style. You know, I'd like to get the wheels refinished. I don't have an interest in changing the wheels. Although I would like to do suspension, maybe coilovers, just bring it down just slightly, bring the height down of the car just slightly a little bit. So that's all I would really like to do to this thing. There's not really a reason to do a lot more other than, you know, some maintenance and upkeep. All right guys, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thanks again for tuning in. I appreciate you having the video on the channel. It means a lot to me and I love to share this thing. As I mentioned, I do have my own designated channel where I share even more depth, more detail and all that stuff on my cars and just fun stuff that's going on. So thanks again for having me and I'll see you next time.